talking about Dune. Let's talk about Dune Part Two properly. And now, and I feel okay. I maybe I should let you guys go first because the thing is, like, I'm going to be one of those annoying people that's kind of going like, well, actually, I think you'll find if you look at the book, because I did read the book or I did listen to the audiobook, all 26 hours of it, before watching the first film. And for me, I cannot talk about the film without talking about the source material. Because for me, a lot about the experience of watching the film is how they have treated the source material and what they've done to it. And it's almost really impossible for me to just deal with this thing as a film on its own.
Now, you see, I read the book. I first read the book 25 years ago or so, and
Yep.
absolutely love the book.
Yep.
So I've read all of the original ones, and I've read the three written by Frank Herbert's
Son.
son.
Yeah.
So
For
I,
me, I haven't read the book, so I'm really sorry.
Okay. So let's start with. Okay, so I mean, let's just kind of try and give like an overview of what's happening. What's happening? So Dune Part One, you have the Atreides, and they live in this world where, like, it's like it's an intergalactic empire with an emperor Shaddam the Fourth, or this is the third. I can never remember which number it is. And you have the Atreides family who have been given stewardship of this planet called Dune, a desert planet that creates this thing called spice, which is pretty much the oil of this world. Spice is like the most valuable thing because without it, they cannot travel interplanetary. So they have this world, they have spice, and they're given stewardship of it. But there is a betrayal. The whole family gets wiped out, all apart from the son, Paul, and his mum, Lady Jessica. And while they're on Dune, they go and live with... So when we finished the first film, they got to the point where they had escaped being massacred with the rest of their family. And they were hiding out with... They had just been accepted into the Fremen, who are the indigenous people the indigenous people of the planet Arrakis, but they have been pushed aside. They have been oppressed. They live out in the desert, in the dune, and they sort of almost live like a sort of nomadic slash guerrilla lifestyle. And where this film starts, you have Paul and Lady Jessica with the Fremen, and then the whole film is really about: are we going to be able to reclaim our place? Are we going to be able, in some cases, are we going to be able to replace our place as the Duke of this area, of this planet? Are we going to be able to get revenge on the people who wiped out our family? That is the basic idea. That's the basic storyline of this. Also, there is this whole thing in there about Paul being possibly the savior of this world, or being almost like this religious figure.
and beyond just Dune of Arrakis, into
of the entire sort of like universe that this thing takes in. That Paul is, and it's about what happens with that. Is he going to take it on? Is he not going to take it on? That is the basic idea. That's the basic thing of it. So let's go on. So first of all, let's talk about the first film, because I don't think if anybody tries to watch this film without watching the first film, I'm sorry, you have no hope. There's just you're just going to be sat down there asking people, okay, what's going on? Who is that person? Why that? What's going on here? You cannot watch this film without watching the first film. So Sean, tell me, and this is something I've always been curious about. As somebody who had never read the book and watched the first film, what did you think?
What, of the first film or of this one?
Of the first film and then this one.
I thought it was pretty average, really. There was I had a couple of issues with it. I didn't think it was a masterpiece in any way, shape, or form.
Yep.
To me it was quite. I liked the idea of the dynasties and the different barons, and some of the action scenes were quite cool. It did annoy me a little. It did annoy me a little bit that all the helicopter-y type things were wings, and I don't know why. It's funny that thing going.
But yeah, ornithopters.
Ornithopters. Yeah, I didn't particularly. I wasn't particularly. Yeah, so I mean, for me, Dune was. Yeah, it was okay, but it wasn't
okay,
smash mouth masterpiece.
Okay, so and what did you think of this second one?
Okay, this second one, yeah, had quite similar views, really. I mean, you know me, I don't know, I could be wrong because in the books, but there was one bit that I thought, right, I mean, we can say about the worms, yeah.
If you're talking about Dune, you're talking about worms.
So we're talking about worms, right? Okay. The thing is, are they really tameable? Because the high priestess, or what do they call her? Paul's mother now. She's like
Yeah, she's the high priestess. Yeah.
yeah, high priestess. How would they get all that stuff on the worm? I mean, to me, that one where they go, okay, let's go, and it's like a whole entourage and all that. I'm like, well, aren't these worms supposed to be pretty, you know,
Well, yeah. Okay.
Doctor style? I mean, how that just sort of appeared? You know what I mean? It's like a, you know, the palanquin or whatever they call it. You know, it's like
all tied down. It's
Yeah,
all
no,
very
I understand that, but how'd they get there in the first place?
yeah.
I mean,
That is to be honest with you, that is a good question and something that I did wonder myself. And they do kind of like sort of they don't they kind of like yeah, and then they go on there.
So,
It's
I mean,
because it's not that big a deal. It's not that big an area of the
no,
film.
no, it's not that big a deal.
It's not a big. It's not a big.
From the bit where they sort of grab them and that, and they got to like run super fast and all that, and then so perhaps they could be really young and be like
Well,
pets, I suppose. I don't know.
well, no. A sandworm is definitely not a
Well,
pet.
that's what I figured.
A sandworm is definitely not a pet. But so, the thing is, I did think about it, and I did think about a very long, boring, technical way in which they could have gotten everybody else on there. But I'll tell you about it afterwards. I'll tell you about it
Yeah, okay,
afterwards.
cool,
I don't think if anybody is listening to this and is thinking, yeah, I'm thinking like Sean, how the heck did they get everybody onto the sandworm? I
Yeah.
can tell you what I think, but
Okay, that's good enough. Yeah, I'm sure
but
there was
even
good reason.
even the solution that I've come up with still has problems. So so generally, you're saying that you thought it was
okay.
all right. It was okay.
I should imagine it would be to see it somewhere like maybe IMAX. It might
Yeah.
have more of an
Like
impression
it.
because I can see. I mean, I saw it actually in Screen One, which is the biggest screen.
It's the biggest screen on the Isle of Wight. Yes.
But you know, and I had my normal lovely seat, which I managed to get. So
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, maybe an IMAX, but I didn't find it. I mean, you know, I think like the Lord of the Rings it was similar sort of, I guess, along
Yeah.
those lines. But
Yeah.
some of the fighting scenes I thought were inconsistent, and when the bit with the smugglers, when the smugglers and old people turn up and all that,
Yeah.
I was
When
like,
Gurney Halleck shows up
well,
again.
you know, that's sort of, you know,
Well,
that's convenient, should we say?
Well,
you know.
you see that, and this is the kind. This is the, and I'm really at this point in time, I'm really happy that you haven't read the book because one of the problems I always thought with the first film is I was watching the film and the way it was adapted, I was kind of like, but I maintain that I don't understand how anybody understands the first film without reading the book because there's a whole bunch of things, character motivations, what actually happens, what goes, which because the book is big and the book is massive, I just sort of like, you know, shushed over and gone over and everything like so I have issues with the first film. I have issues with the first film because I just recently read the book and I've gone, no, but you didn't explain that and you didn't put that in there. And you go, how is anybody following this? Because I can fill in the blanks because I've just read the book, but I don't know how anybody else was in the blanks. And I've had people who said that, who sort of said, yeah. But the thing is, what comes up? So what comes up out of the whole thing is the visuals. The visuals are the thing that you cannot fault Denis Villeneuve and you cannot fault Dune for. The visuals are amazing. I mean, I remember it's kind of like I was talking to some of my friends about it, and I was kind of like watching the first film, going, hang on, but no, what about that? No, you haven't explained that because Holly, you're talking about loving the books. I remember having like a proper emotional reaction to bits in the books where I was kind of like, oh my God. And I got so invested in these characters.
I mean,
and
Lady Jessica is one of my favourite characters in books.
Yeah.
Generally.
Yeah.
I've always, she's just, you know, she's up there. And for me, I love Rebecca Ferguson as well. So Rebecca Ferguson playing Jessica was just like perfect.
Rebecca Ferguson's the high priestess, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah. No, she's good.
She is.
I totally agree with you on that. I thought she's good in. I think she was in Mission Impossible as well, wasn't she?
Yeah.
And Doctor Sleep, I think she's superb.
Right.
Yeah.
So no, yeah.
But
Well,
Okay,
she looks right for the books as well. She's a really good physical fit as well as being able to capture all of the things about her. And you see, I found, I mean, do you say it's probably easier having read the
The
books when
book,
you first
yeah.
watch it, but when you read the book as well, a lot of the motivations and things don't come out until further along in the book.
Well,
So,
yeah.
so
But
to some extent, you may not entirely understand exactly what somebody's thinking was at that point in time, because you wouldn't also at that point in the narrative for the
yeah,
book either.
but the okay, and we will stop talking about part one and go into part two. But as I said, I
Okay,
think,
yeah.
as I said, with me, I find it really difficult to separate the book and the film. But
Another
it
another thing, sorry, just to say another thing in the part two was the psychopathic Harkonnen, the one
Fade
that, like
Rather,
you got Dave Bautista,
yeah, Fade
and the other
Rather,
one who
yeah.
comes, and he didn't he didn't feel menacing at all. I know he was supposed to because he's like, but he just, yeah, I thought of him more as a comic character. I thought, why would surely you could make him more fearsome and more horrible than that if he's
Well,
supposed to be the sort of character that he is. But to me,
Yeah.
he seemed tame, if you like.
well,
I
in the
see that
original, in the first film of it, the character was played by Sting.
in the
Oh,
nappy.
yeah, in the other one, and that was awful. That was absolutely awful. That was that. I like June. I like the David Lynch June, but Sting. In fact, anything I've seen Sting in, Sting cannot act to save his life. Sting is useless. Sting is worse than anyone. Sting is not an actor. I'm sorry.
I would have to agree with you on that Sting is not an actor. So, okay,
Not
so
Sorry, Holly. It looks like I'm really
okay,
upset. I'm sorry. I don't
okay,
mean to. It's just
okay,
No, no,
okay,
I agree. I agree. Sting can't act.
mm,
I'm
okay.
just
So,
saying, in terms of representations of the character,
right.
there have been some, odd
Yeah.
representation. And I can't think how they describe his appearance in
In the
the.
book,
in well, I think the appearance wise, they pretty much nailed it in Dune Part Two.
right.
Yeah,
That is what Fade Rather, I would imagine he looks like. He's not as big as as Raban the Beast. He's not as big as his brother. He is
Right.
he's a lot more. He's a bit more like Paul Atreides in body
Right.
shape and
Okay.
everything like that. So appearance wise, I think they pretty much nailed it. So
Right.
okay,
and
Holly.
I like the fact
Yeah,
that
you haven't actually told me about what you. Okay, you saw it in IMAX. What did you
that's
think
right.
of Part Two?
IMAX. Loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Mm-hmm.
In IMAX, it was extraordinary. It was at the big one in Waterloo. And I think it's the only place in Europe that's showing it in whatever particular ratio it was. We were in the third row. And in an ideal world, we would have actually been further back. But when we
Yep.
went to tickets about a month in advance, those were pretty much the only seats we could get. And we were just, it was basically, it was the first showing. And it was a massive cinema full of geeks. So people clapped at the end.
Well,
Um,
yeah. I
it
I
mean,
was
mean,
it was that sort of film.
let
I
me put it
do
this
sort
way.
of half wish that I had seen that sort of one in IMAX because I should imagine it was an experience.
It was spectacular. It was quite overwhelming in a
Was it
good
like,
way.
did you have to wear glasses?
No,
No, right.
but
Oh,
you were sort of, the screen is so big that you were looking from
Yeah.
sort of left to right and up and down to fully appreciate everything in front of you. We're actually going to see it again on Saturday because we liked it so much.
all right.
Um,
Now, okay, cool. So, anything else you wanted to say?
so it's in terms of the visuals in seeing it in the IMAX, I can't say at this point how it compares to a slightly more regular size screen, but it did blow one away. And I have been also there are a few other things that I like both about the book and the film, which is things around the linguistics and a lot of the culture and things is all based on Islam, on Arabic.
Yep.
So I follow with enthusiasm on much social media and various podcasts Marie Leconte, who is a very entertaining commentator and who is French. I'm going to say Tunisian, but I'm not
Okay.
absolutely. And she observed that she was watching Space Arabs, and this was amazing. And then she went, "But I am an Arab on a planet in space. Therefore, am I a space Arab?" And she went down a fascinating little rabbit hole, pondering the meaning of her existence as a space Arab. And that has an extra fondness for me, having grown up, at least in part, in the Middle East. So there's an extra enjoyment for the language, for those subtleties to it, which give it additional personal connection.
Yeah, yeah, and I know that this is a thing that has long been a thing with Dune, that Frank Herbert borrowed a lot from Arab culture. The Fremen are pretty much Arabs, and the whole idea,
Yeah, yeah,
the whole idea that the planet has been taken over because of this really really precious resource, which is essentially oil. Come on, let's be honest.
yeah.
It's like you have this planet. It's mostly desert. They have this resource that everybody in the world wants because they need it for their travel. It's essentially oil, and their language is very close to Arabic. He's changed a couple of like syllables and everything
There
like that.
there are things that are linked to Arabic, to Aramaic.
Yep.
It's there's a lot of fun looking at the etymology of it all.
There's a whole bit in the film where they talk about, like, they talk about the north and the south, and how the south, there's a lot of fundamentalists, and there's a bit where, like, Stilgar, Javier Bardem's character comes out, and when they're praying, and I'm like, oh my god, you just
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's just Islam on the screen. But this is the thing, going back with my usual rants about Black Panther, and how you have Black Panther and it's made for Black Americans, and how there's not that many Africans actually in Black Panther, which is supposed to be set in Africa. It's a problem with Dune in that if you look at the Fremen, they have taken a lot from Arab culture without casting pretty much any Arabs. and it is an issue, and I didn't think about it, and it's for me, it's still something that sort of like sticks in my craw a bit, and I'm just kind of like, okay, that is a problem. I thought that you might have found a way of fixing this. You didn't. So yeah, they have done a whole bunch of that. Now, Holly, have you said anything else before I go off on my own thing?
Um, I'd say I really enjoyed it. I thought it was beautifully done. I thought it captured the book well.
Hmm.
Um, it's they did a reasonable impression of my expectations of characters. I found how they do some things around Jessica's pregnancy quite interesting, and I
Yes.
look forward to seeing that in based upon knowing how it all works in the book. That's very interesting as well.
Yes, yes,
And
and you don't want to say anything because it would be a spoiler for anybody who has read the book, or even if you haven't read,
exactly,
yeah, yeah, or is planning to watch the film. Yeah, you don't want to say anything about that, about how they do
no,
that. Yeah,
exactly.
I was,
It's just very
yeah.
interesting.
yeah.
I was just going to ask one question. Like the scene, the big arena scene, when there's like the fight and you got all the people
Oh yeah,
around.
the
That
black
I mean, to
sun,
me,
and the
uh,
black and white thing.
yeah,
Yeah,
they got like the big massive arena where he says, "Oh, and
Mm.
he fights Slade." Now, I'm assuming that was CGI. I'm assuming that was
no,
CGI.
give me that. Yeah, imagine that most of that would have been CGI. Yeah,
Because yeah, but what I mean is, to me, again, that those big scenes were reminding me of. I used to watch a thing about battles, ancient battles, and all that, and it just
yeah, yeah,
reminded
yeah.
me. It really did look to me
It was
like,
like
although it might
Gladiator
have
in
been visually
space.
great, it did notice that it was. It was. Whereas Lord of the Rings, you had proper people, like when they were doing a charge, and that was noticeably CGI for me anyway.
Well, yeah, yeah. I think it was mainly the size of it. When you got to the size of it, you
Probably,
started
yeah.
realizing that, okay, yeah, that. I think in my head, I'm immediately that just looks CGI because there's no way you could have gotten that
No,
number of people. There's no way
exactly.
you could
Yeah,
have
no,
built
no,
something
I
that
agree, I
big.
agree. But it was.
I
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'd also add with that though, I found very interesting how they use colour in it and dealing with and I can't think what the Harkonnen's home planet is
Fa-
called.
oh, Gady Prime.
Yes, the way they use colour and that's always all pretty not quite black and white, but is all
Yeah, yeah,
incredible.
yeah. But
Yeah,
like
yeah,
when
yeah,
they
yeah.
when they when
Yeah,
they go
sort of thing.
indoors, it's different. When they go out underneath the black sun, it has like they've done a lot of physics
Mm,
thinking. I
mm,
And
think.
then in contrast, Caladan, where it's watery and you've got a
Yeah.
completely different piece of light. And one thing I read today that I thought was a particularly good observation about the first Dune was the scene when the Bene Gesserit have landed on Caladan and they're
Yes.
walking in the rain
Yes.
with the rain blowing at them and the wind blowing their clothes around them.
Yeah.
How the wonderful realism of that actually made it very relatable for something that's not relatable. We all know what it feels like to walk through the rain, to be whipped by wind. And I thought that was really interesting. That was another one from a thought from I have stolen from Marie Leconte, which
Okay.
I just thought was a really interesting insight into how things can be effectively made. You can feel connected with something that you have no connection with based upon really subtle
Yeah.
life similarities.
All
Anyway,
right, cool. Okay,
go
now
round.
me, my turn. So okay, so my problem with the first one, I think a lot of my problems with the first one is that the first one is pretty much all set up. The first one is an almost 3 hour film, but all it's really doing is setting things up for the second one. It's trying to put things in place and everything like that. And I had issues because I felt like, you were talking about people's motivations and all that kind of stuff. But I was thinking that even for me, the big thing that didn't land in the first one is why the Atreides or how the Atreides get betrayed. Is how they get betrayed, who does the betraying, why does that person do the betraying, and the way it's done in the first one, the Atreides look like the dumbest asses in the universe because it's like, if it was that easy to betray you, why didn't you put like, stops in places? How could you be so betrayed so easily? How could you be wiped out so easily? And these are all, yeah,
That's
these
a
are all
terrific
things
thought,
that,
Tosin. That's
what?
a terrific thought. That's a terrific thought. That's made me really, really think.
Yeah,
That's a great observation. Why would they put like what is wrong with the Atreides? They would have probably done a good job.
exactly. I mean, and that's the whole thing. In the book, it is explained a lot more how
Right.
that happened and how they had all these checks and balances and the clever way in which the Harkonnens get around that, which is not even mentioned in the. So,
Right.
so my problem with the first one was just like I felt like they just kept turning over 2 pages at once because there was so much story, and that's why I keep saying that this. I would have much have preferred Dune to have been a TV series where you had time to explain all these different things. I still maintain that one of the greatest episodes of TV that we have lost because Dune was made into a film and not a TV series was Who is the Traitor? Because that whole section of trying to figure out who the traitor is or whether there is actually a traitor would have been an amazing episode of TV. But at the same time, like I'll read you something I wrote like last year when one of my friends had just watched Dune for the first time. I'm saying like like I was watching the film and I was going all book snob and going, but you left that bit out. But without that bit, this bit makes no sense. Hang on, you've neglected to communicate just how damn dangerous it is to go outside on Arrakis. He's walking miles away from the house among the palm trees. He has no still suits on, and he isn't even sweating. However, that is a beautiful shot. And that is pretty much what was going through my head in the whole thing because the strongest bit I think of the Dune films is the visuals. And I would say I saw but having said that, because all the setup has been done, and that's where they had to. I think they had to cut a lot of corners to get the setup up and running. I had a much better time with Dune Part Two because Dune Part Two I think is a lot more faithful to the book and actually what happens in the second half of the book. It's like they don't cut that much. They change a couple of things, but even the changes they make, I think, are very good changes. I think because I think they make two big changes from what I can remember, and they have to do with kids. And I think that they are good because I remember reading the book, and there was a bit that had to do with a kid where I was reading, and going, "How the hell are they going to do that?" I'm interested to see how they're going to do this in the second one, and the way they address it, I think, is actually quite good because but I mean, and having seen this film, I didn't see this film on an IMAX. I saw this film on I think it was a bog standard cinema screen. It was even smaller than screen one on the Isle of Wight, Sean.
Wow.
And there were scenes in it, like right at the beginning. There's one scene where they are attacking a spice refinery, where Paul Atreides and Chani, played by Zendaya, are attacking a Paul. And there's one particular where they're running along and something falls out of the sky beside them as they're running, and I was just like, damn, that's a good shot.
Yeah,
There was a bit.
I know the bit you're talking about. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
visually.
I just remember looking at it going, damn, that is a good shot. And then, and you knew you were talking about the ornithopters, but for someone who's read the book, because that's exactly how they are described in the book. And there's the bit where I'll call it an apocalypse now shot, where they have all these ornithopters flying in formation, and then there's the sun, and then the camera pans around them. And I was just looking at it going, damn, I was looking at the shots just going, no, okay, visually this is stunning. Visually this is stunning. This is great and everything like that. But generally speaking, I had a much better time with this than the first because I think I had gotten over my whole bits of You're leaving out my best parts of the book. How dare you, Denis Villeneuve? How dare you? And I've gotten over that and this bit, but I think this is a lot more, is a lot truer to the book. The way they end it, it is a very, very confident ending, which it's a very confident ending, which isn't exactly the way the book ends, but you can see. Carry on, Holly.
But it's not the end of the book either.
I think the film ends. It ends. The film ends roughly. I think the film ends. I think shortly after the book ends, if that makes sense.
Because part 3 is already lined up.
Yeah, I know part 3 is already lined up, and that's why I think it's a very confident ending, and that's why there's something about this that I do not understand, because we've been living in a world where, so Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, that made more money than Dune Part 1, I think. So Dune Part 1 was 400 and something million. I'm pretty sure that Dead Reckoning made over $500,000, and people are still talking about Dead Reckoning about being a failure. And so much so that they were wondering whether they're going to make the second part of Dead Reckoning and make another Mission Impossible film. However, with Dune, the first one made less than $500,000, but they seem happy. And this, bear in mind, this is made by Warner Brothers, and this is a studio that has been canceling films left, right, and center, that has finished filming a film and refuses to release it because they prefer to take the money from a tax cut. So if you look up Acme versus Coyote, or Coyote versus Acme, and you'll see what the kind of rubbish Warner Brothers is getting up to. However, they are happy to pretty much say we are going to make 3 films. They're happy to say we're going to make 3 films when the first one only made half of them. I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand what kind of hold Denis Villeneuve has on the heads of Warner Brothers, or what videotape he has of them doing some nefarious thing, which means he can do whatever the hell he wants. But it looks as if they are going to make a third one. They're going to make Dune Messiah.
It's one of the best-selling sci-fi novels of all time. So when it's done beautifully, you can see just it has enough of a
Yes, but Holly, we're talking about Hollywood. $500,000. We're talking about Hollywood. If possibly, a big film doesn't make over $1 billion now, they start firing people left, right, and center.
Maybe they just really, really love Frank Herbert.
That would be the only thing that there's a guy called David Zaslav who's in charge of Warner Brothers at the moment, and that would be the only thing that I think I've ever seen that he loves, because that guy just sort of cuts things. He cuts things, throws things out, messes up careers. He doesn't seem to care. But anyway, let us get back to, we've been banging on about Dune Part 2 for quite a while, with quite effectively not saying that much about the film.
Yeah.
without giving, it's all about vibes, and I think that's the thing. I think Dune Part, I heard somebody say on the radio earlier this week that the first film was more about vibes. It was more about vibes than it was about plot. And it was just kind of like, oh, that's amazing. Oh, that's great. Oh, that makes me feel like this. What's the plot? Don't really know. And I feel like with this second one, I mean, they carry that on. I think the second film makes more sense. I think if you've gotten to the end of the first film and you think this makes sense, I'm with this, I think you'll like the second film, because I think the second film, it makes more sense. It's more of a war movie. It's more about things moving towards this war, who wants it, who doesn't want it, what the different political factions are going on about, how this guy is being controlled, or is he being controlled, and how some people want him to be like this sort of messiah figure, and he doesn't want to be this messiah figure, but he's thinking that I might have to become this messiah figure to prevent bad things happening. And I feel like all that stuff is actually interesting. I think it's quite well done. I think it's a very good adaptation of the second half of the book. And I think they did a very good job. For me, I would give Part 2 a 4 out of 5, where I would have given Part 1 a 3.
Yeah. For me, yeah. I mean, I don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it and that, and I did have some issues with it. Visually, it was very, very stunning. And you're exactly right. You've picked up on that. I've no idea at all why they decided to get rid of the Atreides, why they wanted to get rid of the Atreides.
Yeah,
I didn't pick that from the first one, and I didn't really pick it up from this one. So perhaps you'll enlighten me sometime. But I've got no idea. I thought you put them on there. It's brilliant. Anyway, that's immaterial. This film, you're right. generally a 3-star, but because of Florence Pugh, no. It gets a 4. But I like her. She's class. But yeah,
Sean, you might say you're joking, but we know the truth.
I think it's worthy of a 4-star. I think it's worthy.
We know your love for Florence is pure. All right, 5 from Holly. I could never have seen that coming.
Not give it a 5. It's amazing.
You've had a really good year this year, Holly. You've had a super year. You've
I know.
Seen, like so many 5 films. It's brilliant.
And 12 films in the cinema so far.